Is Tucker Carlson one segment away from converting to Islam? Well, it sure looks like it. I mean, did he just ask that all the Jews in Israel should go DNA testing in order to prove that they have the right to live in the land of Israel? Isn't that a very bizarre question? My name is Mansur, reporting for All Israel News. Let's hear a little bit more about what Mike Huckabee had to say to Tucker in that interview. Thank God that he was a strong, devoted Christian who knew what he was talking about, because someone had to put Tucker in his place with the nonsense that he was spitting out of his mouth.
Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct? Yes. Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are?
Here we go.
Started with Abraham.
It's Abram. It's pre-Abraham. It's Abram.
Ishmael, Muslim, was born to Abraham before God changed his name to Abraham. It seems like he's preaching and quoting the Quran perspective of event here and not the biblical one.
Receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land.
Israel is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose.
Who are the people?
Who are the people that God gave the land? Who are the people, the descendants of Abraham? Is he seriously a Christian? Does he know that Jesus, his Lord, Christ, his King, was a Jew? Is he aware of that? Where is he taking this to? That is a very bizarre line of questions, don't you think? Why is he asking that? Where is he trying to go with that?
Who are the modern? Yes. Who are the descendants? So we know that God promised this land to Abram's, actually not to Abram's descendants.
What he's saying right now here is textbook 1-to-1 Muslim theology. That is the way that they try to rewrite back history in order to justify that they are the chosen people of God now, the Muslims, and not the Jews, which is something that was done also by parts of the church called replacement theology, when Christians came and were trying to kick out the Jews out of the story of the Bible and the promise that God had for them, and replace them by the church to justify many, many other things that they wanted to do, which usually were very shady and very wrong. So Tucker is directly, clearly basing his claims on the Quran regarding to the land of Israel and the promised land of the Jews.
As it says in Genesis 15. Who are his descendants now, and how do we know who they are?
Isn't that clear? I mean, let's read it for a second. And Abraham said to God, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before you." God said, "No, but Sarah, your wife, shall bear your son, and you should call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him on the everlasting covenant of his offsprings after him." So you have Yitzchak Ishmael, Isaac and Ishmael. You have the godfather of the Jews and the godfather of the Muslims. And the Bible is very, very clear into who he gave his blessing to, which was Isaac, Yitzchak. And then later on, we have David came, and we have Jesus, Yeshua, Mashiach came, and etc. and etc. And then Christianity came, and then also Islam as a religion came out of this whole kind of story. But the only thing is that Christianity and Judaism kind of continued one another, while Islam was trying to rewrite back history and to basically move the Jews out of the picture, move the Christians out of the picture, and put themselves as the chosen people of God and as the last religion that should dominate this earth. And that's why many Christians resisted, and many Jews, of course, resisted and fled, because they refused to succumb to Sharia law and to Islam. And now we have today what we see as the Christian, Judeo-Christian value of the Western world, and we have the Muslim world and other groups around the planet. That's just a very, very simplistic way to tell you. So in general, if you are a Christian, by default, it's not like you should, but just by default, you will be on the side of Israel, on the side of the Jews, on the side of the Bible, because this is literally the foundation of your faith. Tucker is going here right now preaching Islamic teaching. You heard me right. He's preaching Islamic teaching of how he sees the story of the covenant with Israel and the legitimacy that the Jews have to their land, the land of Israel, the land of their ancestors, Isaac, Abraham, and etc. Wow. Isn't that bizarre? What have he become? What happened to him? Why should the Jews prove to you that they have the right to live in their Jewish state, the only Jewish state, after half of them were massacred, genocided by the Europeans, and the other half was almost genocide by the Muslim countries, so they had to flee and go to other countries in order to survive. So they come and find one place, a tiny, tiny country, the Jewish country of Israel, and they go to live there. And then Tucker comes and have the audacity to come and say, prove to us that you're actually Jewish. Prove to us that you are the people of the Bible, that you have the right to live in this land. Why isn't he asking the people in Syria to prove to them that they are actually the Syrians? I mean, Syria used to be a Christian land. Lebanon used to be Christian land. Turkey used to be the Christian land before the Muslim invasion came and took it over. As a matter of fact, everybody loves to tell the Jews all the time, go back to where you came from. Why isn't anyone telling the Muslims to go back to where they came from? Did you know that any Muslim land right now on the face of this earth that is outside of a small area in the desert of Saudi Arabia called Medina, any Muslim right now, country that is on this earth, was invaded, was occupied by forces who came and butchered and killed anyone that was living there and forced them to convert into Islam. Any place on earth that is under Muslim regime right now that is not the city of Medina in the desert of Saudi Arabia was done by force and terrible execution and slavery and just you name it. Why isn't anyone asking them to go back to where they came from, to give back the land that they've stolen from others? As a matter of fact, a big chunk of the Middle East used to be part of the Jewish kingdom, which was stolen from them. Why isn't anyone asking them to give it back? Why is everybody so focused on Tucker going around, so focused on asking the Jews to give away their only Jewish land? And give it to who? Where is he going with that? Let's watch this video because it just shows you what an ignorant or maybe just vile person he is.
In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total. And 8 million of them live here. The rest live mostly in New York or South Florida and a few other places.
Okay.
So this is a small population of people. They have connection to this land historically, biblically.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
If Bibi's family, we know they lived in Eastern Europe. There's no evidence they ever lived here. He's not religious.
But
in what sense?
How do we know
that? Do you have his family tree? No, we don't.
Do you?
He doesn't. So no one does. That's the point.
But
so how do we know that he has any connection to this land at all?
And if there has been a practice...
Wait. How did they get to Europe in the first place? And why were they stuck there for 2,000 years? Why is he ignoring that? Isn't that bizarre? Did they just decide one day, hey, let's go for vacation, honey. I've checked in Lonely Planet. Let's go to Rome.
Judaism and a connection to the language, the Bible, the land.
His ancestors didn't. He doesn't practice Judaism in any rigorous way. His ancestors didn't live here. They didn't speak the language, and there's no evidence they ever lived here. So on what basis does he have a right to be here?
Very much speaks the language. Well, he has fought for the land. His family has fought for the land.
Dodging a very obvious question, which is, where does this right come from? And the reason it's meaningful
given you that answer.
Guys, this is textbook replacement theology. This is textbook dangerous ideology that come to basically strip the Jews out of their covenant with God and their right to exist in the Jewish land. And in general, it leads later on the right to exist at all. And that's something that is started in the ancient days of the church when some factions of the church, mostly under the Catholic Church back there, which have done terrible things, by the way, in the history of the Catholic Church. And some of them, they repented, and some more, some less. But they came and they basically said that the Jews have no more right in front of God. And when it comes and it says the chosen people of God, it talks about us, the church, and not about the Jews. And then people were a bit confused. But wait a second, Jesus was a Jew. All the prophecies are talking about the Jews, from the Old Testament and the New Testament, that they will come in the end of days and God will have a plan for them. So what does that have to say? What do you mean about that? By that? So then they came and said, no. Every time it's mentioned the Jews, it actually talks about the church. The Jews have no more plan, and that's why they can be persecuted, they can be shunned, they're evil, they're wicked, and they're the ones who crucified Jesus, and we need to take them down, and etc., and etc. So Tucker is full on, ladies and gentlemen, replacement theology. Very dangerous, very vile theology.
It's because there are a lot of people in the territory that Israel controls today, particularly in the West Bank, who, through genetic testing, we can know their families have been here for thousands of years. We don't know whether they practiced Judaism, whether they were Samaritans, pre-Islam. We don't know that. A lot of them we know have been Christians for 2,000 years. they have less of a right to the land than someone whose ancestors, the only thing we know about them is they lived in Latvia or Poland. They're Eastern European. How does that work?
They're Jewish.
By what definition?
They're Jewish by their
But how do we know they have any
ethnicity.
connection
They're
to
Jewish
the
by
Jews
their
of the,
faith. They're
of the
Jewish
Bible?
by the connection to the language. Jewish by the connection to the Torah.
But how do we know that Bibi, specifically Bibi's ancestors, ever lived here? How do we know that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
How do we know if the Prime Minister of Israel's ancestors ever lived?
Maybe I could ask you, how do we know they didn't? I mean,
Well, it's on the basis of the claim that they did that all kinds of things happen. People are displaced. There's a money flow. I mean, it's a big question. A lot hangs on this. It's not some.
So what is he asking? What is he referring? Does he want some outside committee to come right now and enter Israel and go and start doing DNA testing and see whoever doesn't have genetically DNA for the Jews who were here 2,000-3,000 years ago, then take him out and send him somewhere else, send him back to where he came from? I mean, is that what he's suggesting? Like, why isn't he saying that you should do that to Syria? Syria was Christian before Islam came and invaded and took it over by force. Lebanon was Christian before Islam took it by force. Turkey was Christian before Islam took it by force. So many places. Why isn't he saying that you should do that to that? As a matter of fact, any Muslim place that you see today was not Muslim before, unless it was in the area of Medina, small area in the desert of Saudi Arabia. Anywhere else was taken by force, by Muslim invasion. They went and killed and butchered and massacred and genocided entire nations and forced conversion on them and enslaved them, and now they're there. So why isn't no one telling them to go back to where they came from or do DNA testing and prove that they have the right to be on this land? Why is it always about the Jews? It's just mind-blowing, right? I mean, it is a very, very odd angle and question that Tucker is asking here.
Theoretical thing like, oh, do my grandparents do this or do that? It's like, no, we have a right to be here because my ancestors were here. Okay, how do we know they were here?
How do we know that the Jews were in Israel? Isn't the name Israel in Hebrew? Yerushalayim, Israel. Chaim, Moshe, Kapara, Tzipora. Like these are the Jewish names, man.